Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 258 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 32 of A Feast for Crows. That's Cersei 7.
And as we
That's
always...
a tongue twister, by the way.
It is.
That's Cersei 7.
That's Cersei 7, yeah. Or you sound like maybe you've had one too many cups of Arbor Gold. Well, as we always try to do about this time, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you happen to have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers. Then we will spoil things for you. Regardless, we'll hopefully provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. That'll provide some additional information about the characters, geography, and like spelling and things, you know, which you don't get
Right, yeah.
in a podcast. Yeah. Apart from Jamie, which we spell wrong routinely. So, you know, ignore that one. In this chapter.
Yes.
How are you, Mackelly?
I still think about that Jamie and how we misspelled it for so long. It bugs me.
It bugs me too. I mean, it's like mortifying to think of it. I mean, because now typically in the notes we just use the letter J, and I'm kind of relieved about that, so that I don't have to look at it. Because every time I see it written down, I'm like, oh,
embarrassing. Idiots. Yeah. I'm doing all right. It was good to see you yesterday.
Did I see you yesterday?
I
Yes, I saw you yesterday.
We sat next to each other for probably 45 minutes at lunch.
And do tell what gift I left you.
What gift you left me?
Well, after you left lunch, you found a little present that hadn't been with you before lunch.
I did? What?
Uh-huh.
Have I found it?
Yeah,
yes,
you found it.
It was the word gift that threw me. Yes.
Wasn't a good gift.
No, it wasn't. So I went, it was a work function. So I came in a short sleeve collared shirt. And when I got home, I wanted to change back into a t-shirt. And so I took off my collared shirt and just happened to notice there was a tick crawling up my back. So luckily it hadn't latched onto anywhere yet. So I flicked it off and crushed it. And then I immediately messaged all of our work friends and you and said, I just found a tick on my back. Oh, that was gross.
That is awful. They freak me out.
Me too.
When they get on the dogs, it's like, I can't deal with it.
Yeah. So that was, I forgot. You did. I'm not necessarily blaming you. There was that leaf that was like caught on a spider web that was floating around you and I. I think that had something to do with it, possibly.
That leaf was like something out of American Beauty. It was just dancing around the whole time we were there. And because it was on a spider thread, you couldn't see what it was. It just seemed to be just dancing in midair.
Right above our heads.
Right above our heads. And that was the tick's way in.
That's right. Launching point. So thankfully I caught it before it hopefully had time to do anything nefarious. I meant for us to take a selfie as I usually have us do, but I ran to the restroom. When I got back, you were gone.
Oh, really? Sorry. I didn't realize that.
The last thing I said is, do you know the code to the restrooms doors over there?
Are you sure? Because I hung around for... Was it number 2's? Because I hung around for ages.
It was not. Well, you were leaving right as I was coming back over to the pavilion.
Oh, I see.
Because it's it's a little walk. It's not like it's...
Yeah.
Anyway, good to see you.
I thought I stuck around long enough for you to get back because I was showing my boss photographs of my neighbor having his tree cut down. My neighbor had a tree cut down, and it was a huge... I mean, okay, this tree was colossal. It was a massive, massive tree. So much so, I mean, I thought it was a big tree, but now I'm separated from this neighbor by my front yard, the road, his front yard, his house, and then half of his backyard. That's where this tree was.
I think I know the house that you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like a 2-story house, so it's got it's quite tall. So I could only ever see the top of this tree. My view is distinctly changed by the absence of this tree. I mean, like, there is a whole piece of sky that I'd never seen, which has reappeared because this tree is gone. And when they finished, I mean, they were there the whole day taking this tree down, and they were chopping pieces up and put it on trucks. And when they finished, they said, we'll come back tomorrow for those 4 pieces. And they left the biggest 4 pieces of the trunk were left on their front lawn. And the tree guy said that they estimated that each piece, so the 4 pieces, and this was just a small piece of what was left of, just what they couldn't fit on their truck.
Yeah.
Each piece weighed 4 tons.
Wow. Are you serious?
That's what they told us.
Oh my, that's kind of,
what they told us.
That's kind of terrifying to think of the weight that those trees have. I've got those loblolly pines all around my house, and I worry in storms.
Oh, yeah. I move my cars. I move the expensive ones anyway.
Right.
the ones I care about.
Of course, when you move them, that's where the tree falls.
That's it. There's no safe place. Yeah. And we've had some weather. As most of the listeners know, we're in North Carolina, and we've had crazy storms. Hurricane Helene.
Yes,
I think she was called.
And our heart goes out to those in western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. The videos and photos and just reports have been terrible.
And way worse than I anticipated. I mean, I was aware we were going to have some rain, and I was not watching the Weather Channel to see how disastrous it was going to be. I was watching my local soccer league to see if my game was going to get cancelled.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was way worse than I thought. So my family all had, how prompt I am to respond to messages.
Oh, yes. Immediate, basically.
Family in the UK all had like 4-day-old messages to me to see if I was okay that I hadn't responded to.
The panic rising day by day as you're not
exactly.
You're entirely unaware of it at all.
Yeah.
But yes, it's very tragic, very sad, and I hope everyone gets what they need to recover. And one of the saddest things, there's a little town called Chimney Rock. It's by Lake Laura out there.
I know Chimney Rock, yeah.
And there's a little park in the town, and we were there a couple years ago, and there's a rainbow bridge, and it's just a little bridge painted in rainbow colors over a little creek, and it's for you bring your pets collars when they cross the rainbow bridge, and you put them on the railings of the bridge, and that
which is some kind of euphemism for a pet dying.
Yeah, they cross the rainbow bridge when the pet dies. We'll see you on the the other side of the rainbow bridge.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. We could look it up.
I actually knew what you meant, but I was thinking because it was kind of like not embedded in my conscience that some of our listeners might not know that.
Right. Yeah. But good that you clarified. Yeah. But the bridge was completely wiped away, and of course, there's so much more tragic events than that. But still, it was just sad to see someone took a picture before and after, and the bridge is just completely gone. So
wow.
Anyway,
and they said that I-40, which is the interstate that runs from North Carolina to California.
Yeah.
That section between Asheville, North Carolina, and Knoxville, Tennessee, is going to be closed until next year.
Oh,
we're only in October, so it's months of this road being closed.
Yeah.
And that's a major interstate.
One of the major interstates in the country.
Right. I mean, that's a huge workaround to not go that way. I had no idea how I would get to California without I-40.
Yeah, yeah.
Should I need to?
Should you need to? Yeah, should you decide to?
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, that's not very funny banter.
No, it's not. No,
not our usual mix of silly and profane.
We did work a tick in, though.
The tick was kind of funny. All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Cersei Lannister? Last we saw of Cersei, she was continuing to scheme against her daughter-in-law Margaery, meeting with the new High Septon, and reinstituting the Faith Militant. Busy morning.
Indeed.
Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
I don't see any reason why not to. Well, the Small Council is discussing the events at the mouth of the Mander, where the Iron Islanders have taken the Shield Islands. Of course, we knew this. Margaery is livid. She demands action from the crown, but Cersei is more sanguine, and she thinks that this is something that Highgarden should deal with. They have the men, but not the ships, because the Redwyne fleet is currently blockading Dragonstone. Loras tries to reason with Cersei. Margaery is a little too inflamed at this point. He asks that the fleet be freed to provide aid, but Cersei says not until Dragonstone falls.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Loras offers to win Dragonstone for Cersei, and she agrees. His rashness might just cost him his life, to Cersei's delight. And if he succeeds, then Stannis is harmed. It's all upside. She walks with Grand Maester Pycelle to her apartments, concluding that he's become an obstacle to her and needs to be dumped. She meets Qyburn, who assures her that he has a champion to replace Loras should he fall. Cersei is unsure. The plate armour that Qyburn had her order is too heavy for a person, but Qyburn seems very confident.
Later, while in bed with Lady Taena Merryweather, Cersei is thrilled that without Loras, Margaery will be next to naked. So her hopes of seducing her into a ruinous relationship are on the rise. Cersei notes the pointed questions that Taena asks and grows concerned as to Taena's allegiances. She reminds her friend that she will be given to Qyburn should she play Cersei falsely. Taena declares her loyalty. Well, who wouldn't at this point? Cersei speculates on having sex with Taena, imagining it fondly compared to her times with Robert, who would use her roughly and then feign ignorance the next day. But Cersei was sure that he remembered and was just too ashamed to admit it.
Cersei cannot catch a break. She's roused from her bed again by news that Falyse Stokeworth is here and distraught. Cersei rises wearily, expecting to hear that Bronn is dead. Instead, she learns that Falyse's husband, Ser Loras, not only didn't quietly assassinate Bronn, he challenged the man to single combat.
Oy.
Bronn, as you might expect, fought with a distinct lack of chivalry and won with ease. Ser Loras confessed the conspiracy before he died. Falyse asked the guards to arrest Ser Bronn, but they refused to move against their new Lord Stokeworth.
Oh boy. Cersei gives Falyse to Qyburn. He's delighted. The puppeteers are quite used up. Cersei shelves Bronn for a later date and goes back to bed. And now, quite drunk, gropes Taena roughly, who wakes and submits to her queen's will. But Cersei finds no pleasure in it, and when Taena asks how she can repay the queen, Cersei sends her away. This never happened.
Yep,
One thing about Cersei chapters, she has a lot of conversations.
She does. She's always talking to people, Cersei, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think perhaps it's she has less of an inner life than some.
Right.
Like, Brienne is all inner thoughts,
Yes,
basically, but
yes.
Cersei is... And that's maybe just because Cersei's got so much more going on than
Right.
Brienne, but it does sort of reflect on how introspective they are as people, the fact that we basically just see Cersei talking to people. It's like a Cersei POV chapter is just actually a third person POV that happens to be in the room with Cersei all the time,
And is really
Whereas-
good at reading her mind because she
Yes,
she says one thing while she's thinking something
Well,
else,
true.
you know.
True. That is true.
And some of it's probably also that, Brienne spends a lot of time on a horse with very few people, whereas Cersei is surrounded by people. That probably has something too.
It would lend itself to self-reflection after a while, one would imagine.
Yes.
I've never ridden for weeks on end, but I'm thinking that
Yeah.
the mind would wander.
My grandfather, he was born and raised in New Mexico around the turn of the last century, and he was a cowhand for a lot of it. And he spent a lot of time driving cattle, and a lot of time up on ridges by himself, and a lot of time alone. And when he first started, an older cowhand said, you're going to be alone out there a lot. And he recommended that my grandfather start smoking a pipe because he said the pipe would help keep him company and help him feel less isolated out there. So maybe Brienne should take up smoking a pipe and she would feel less isolated.
That is a fascinating story, Mackelly. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Have you read any Cormac McCarthy?
I'm familiar, but have not read.
Yeah. You did well with your language. You evoked Cormac McCarthy, sort of like. I could sort of see your grandfather on the ridge, silhouetted against the dimming, the setting sun,
with his cowboy hat and pipe in his mouth.
Pipe in mouth, little curl of smoke keeping him company.
Exactly.
I wondered if the old cowboy was going to say something along the lines of, "And it'll keep the mosquitoes at bay" or something like that,
Anyway, so Cersei, the first part of this chapter, it comes across very clear that she seems either unaware or unconcerned how bad it would be for the entire realm if Highgarden were to fall.
Yes, but is that a serious concern? I mean, again, the only reason that Margaery is in there beseeching the small council to send aid to the Reach is because they don't have any ships. They've got the personnel to take those islands back in a heartbeat. That's what Cersei says. In fact, we kind of skipped over it, but Cersei says you have plenty of boats there. Why don't you just get on those and sail your 10,000 men across and take the islands back?
Yes, of course. The boats she's referring to are pleasure barges and fishing skips.
Boats. Yeah, exactly. So yes, Cersei doesn't care, and Loras points out that they would be very vulnerable to the Iron Islanders' longships.
Right.
Fair point. But overall, though, what you've ended up with is a situation where the Iron Islanders have established foothold on the what are they called?
The shields.
Shield Islands, yes. But they can't go any further because the mainland is absolutely covered with 10,000 Reach soldiers who would defeat them. They can raid from the Shield Islands, and that's troubling. But I don't think Highgarden's in any real danger. And let's be honest, Cersei would not care the damage it would do to her reputation, the realm, her alliances, anything else. She would just take great delight in the fall of the Tyrells.
Yep. She's using her power to rake her supposed allies. They're supposed to be her best allies over the coals here. Any small council member with a spine would point out, you are the Queen Regent. Letting the Ironborn take part of the Reach is not a good look. And if they do, and that's one of Loras's concern, is that they could sail up the Mander, and if they sail a large enough force up, they could take Highgarden. I agree with you. If they tried to take Highgarden, they would need to come on land in order to do it. In which case, I think
You can't just shout from your boat, "This is mine now." Send me some taxes.
Yeah, she's just concerned with getting her due respect. She keeps getting really aggravated that Margaery is kind of using commanding terms like "we must react."
Oh, yeah. She does not like that.
Yeah, she's too concerned about that and settling personal vendettas to actually do anything useful here.
Just one thing, and I've only really thought about this just now, so it's not in the notes. Good luck handling this one. But heretofore, the Cersei chapters, we've seen Margaery be quite subtle and sort of try to get her way via Tommen.
Right.
But here, she's sort of like put her hand in the trap of going to see the small council and had it slapped back by Cersei.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this will further lead her to try and use sort of the back channels via the young king rather than direct asking for things in future.
Which seems to have been rather ineffective here.
Exactly. Yes. And Cersei definitely might want to think about that because it's pretty effective getting the king to be on your side.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'd just point out real quick that House Merryweather is a Reach house. So you'd think Orton would be a little more concerned here, a little more on the side of the Tyrells. The Long Table, which is their seat, is along the Mander. It's further northeast from Highgarden. It's up near Bitterbridge. But, I think it was in the Victorian chapter, we learned that back in the day, the Ironborn used to raid all the way up to Bitterbridge. So it's not
right
beyond reasonable doubt that they could get near Long Table. So you'd think he would be a little more concerned, but he does not show it.
But he is like all the small council, a lickspittle and a lackey.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
he definitely
so,
is.
Cersei wants to know why the Ironborn have chosen now to raid the Reach, and I think it's been years of peace, essentially, and Qyburn provides an answer to her, which is, it's Euron. Euron is the difference,
Right.
Under Balon, Balon had his wings clipped, and he was staying put on the Iron Islands. But now Euron is a different person. That is the primary answer, I think. I don't think Qyburn is wrong to say that, and he is giving her the truth.
Right.
But you think there's more to it than that, right?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, Balon was actually trying to make an alliance with the Lannisters to help him secure the North. Balon was pretty much just interested in acquiring the North. And yes, you're right. Euron, and Qyburn's right. Euron is the difference. He is the reason why they are expanding the way they are. But yeah, I think there's other factors that are being overlooked, such as the fact that the Redwyne fleet is on the wrong side of the continent. That's
But maybe Qyburn is just doing the dance one needs to do with Cersei. Because the last thing she wants to hear is someone back up what the Tyrells were just telling her a minute ago.
Right.
They did have a point.
I think that very well might have been the case. But, it made me think Euron must have ways of getting such news that the Redwyne fleet had, left the west coast of Westeros. I was thinking possibly trading galleys that come to port at Pike or wherever, like the Miraham, the one that Theon sailed in on.
It's a constant, not a problem, but sort of just a low-grade rumble of pedantry, how quickly information gets around the realm sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
It was very difficult for George Martin to make such a vast world and then to have community. I mean, he does it through ravens a lot, but sometimes things get out so quickly over, 3,000 miles that you're like, is that realistic, really?
The show, a big pedantry of the show for a lot of people was Peter Baelish getting around the realm so quickly. He was here and there and everywhere. But another possible reason could be that Tywin is dead and Euron doesn't respect the current smallest council.
Yeah. But then you might have thought that they would attack the west, Casterly Rock, rather than the Reach.
I guess so. Unless, Tywin was Hand of the King, so he was in charge of the whole realm at this point, and without him, I guess they could pick the weakest and most fruitful location, and maybe they determined that would be the Mander, possibly.
Yeah. I wonder, just one thought here, and there's absolutely no evidence for this, but this is a really good result for Cersei Lannister. She has a legitimate reason to want the Redwyne fleet to stay put. She has great delight in the fact that some of the Reach has fallen to the Iron Islanders. She takes even more delight in refusing to help. And now she's got the possibility of losing Loras Tyrell once and for all. So all of this is fantastic news for her. Might she have been the one to communicate to the Iron Islands and say, hey, King Euron?
Oh, gosh, I had never thought of that.
I don't like the Tyrells. I want a new ally. How about you?
Huh. We haven't heard her think that in her private thoughts, but, I mean, certainly something she would do without thinking through the consequences.
Well, true enough. I mean, that really is pure speculation. I mean, like you said, we've never heard her think it, but it is interesting how in her favor, at least from her point of view, all of this would seem.
Yeah. But the final reason that I was going to mention about the factors is we know something that nobody in King's Landing knows, and that's that at least initially, it didn't seem like Euron had any plans on staying on the shields. That was just to give his men a taste of victory, and then they were going to sail on to Essos. Things have changed, but they don't know that in King's Landing. So
we'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Well, but the assumption would be if you've taken some of the land, you would try to hold it, right? I mean, that you wouldn't need a raven to tell you that.
Right, and that was he appointed those 4 lords, but we, at the time had thought, boy, he's just serving these 4 lords up as fodder because we had discussed that he was trying to get rid of the top lieutenants of his biggest rivals, and so he made them all lords on these islands. And like I said, they don't know that in King's Landing, so that's not a conjecture that they might have, that he really had no intention of keeping hold of these islands.
Right. Yeah. We got updates on some of the people that were involved in the battle at the Shield Islands. Lord Hewitt is dead, and Lord Chester is dead as well. Lord you want to say more about that? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say Humphrey Hewitt, we kind of saw that coming. He was the one, the Lord of Oakenshield, he was the one that was tied up, and his wife and daughters were being made to serve naked. And it didn't look like he was going to be long for this world. Yes. So we learn now that at least the news reaching King's Landing is that he did not. And Lord Chester, Maribald Chester, Lord of Greenshield, Meryn Volmark is the new lord, at least temporarily, of Greenshield.
Right.
So Lord Serry's heir is dead. Lord Serry is Lord Osbert Serry. He's the Lord of Southshield. His heir is the knight Talbot that Victarion fought and had respect for.
Oh,
on that
ship.
Yeah. He had hoped that maybe someone had fished Talbot out of the sea. He didn't seem to have been. So, and it's mentioned in the chapter that Lord Serry has escaped to Highgarden. So at least his father, the Lord, had survived. And finally, Lord Grimm is captive in his own castle, which again, much like Lord Hewitt, it does not bode well when you're captive.
No, the Iron Islanders aren't. Yes. So Cersei takes the opportunity of all this to blame her enemies for the Ironborn attack, which, as soon as I read those words out, I'm reminded of the idea I just had a minute ago that she's actually to blame. As soon as she starts blaming other people, I'm like, wait a second. But she blames Stannis and Willis Tyrell for not sort of appropriately garrisoning the Shield Islands. But again, the Redwyne fleet was central to the defense of these, and it's not there. It's not his fault.
Yeah, no thought of the fact that she commanded the full force of the Redwyne fleet to Dragonstone, leaving the western coast defenseless.
And Stannis is a strange one, because obviously Stannis has... The North is a sort of three-way sort of tug of war at the moment between the Boltons, the Ironborn, and Stannis. And so an alliance between Stannis and the Ironborn would be troublesome, potentially, especially in the absence of the Redwyne fleet. It would sort of give Stannis a little bit of a foothold.
Yes.
But it also seems a little bit unlikely just because of how rigid Stannis is.
Right. Yeah, she's blaming Stannis for everything and anything at this point. Her last chapter, she blamed him for the chaos in the Riverlands to the High Septon. And he's nowhere near the Riverlands. He has nothing to do with the Riverlands. Of course, Merryweather again jumps in to support her and says, a diversion. You're very clever, Your Grace, to have sorted this out. And only Grand Maester Pycelle challenges her and says, he's hoping to win the North. He's not going to side with the Ironborn. They're their enemies.
Right,
So,
exactly.
but, having said all that, we know Stannis is not involved. But
Right.
if the North has turned against him, which
Stannis.
we have, turned against Stannis, which we have reason to possibly believe because Wyman Manderley killed Davos Seaworth in cold blood. So, well, if that's the case, then the Ironborn might be his last ally. And if so, if he decided to ally with the Ironborn, it would replenish his destroyed fleet from Blackwater Bay. And,
True.
give him at least some ally who he's desperately searching for. So in some ways, you can kind of see, we were there on the shields. We know that's not the case. But in some ways, you can kind of see how it might have made some little bit of level of sense anyway.
I don't know if you share my surprise at Marjorie's animation over the Shield Islands. I mean, obviously it's part of the Reach and therefore her ancestral homes, and they are strategically important, especially if the Iron Islanders are flexing. But is it worth this rant and the loss of sang-froid in front of the small council? Whenever Marjorie does anything, I often wonder if it's an act to belie her true feelings. Is she playing some three-dimensional chess here? Is she trying to force Cersei to change her plans? Or is she trying to force Cersei to do what she knows Cersei's going to do, which is refuse her to paint Cersei in a bad light in some future way?
Yeah. I had not thought about it as anything but her being sincere, but when you raise those points, I can see that perspective. I can see her doing that.
Because you're right. If Highgarden falls, it's bad for the realm. And Cersei has an opportunity here to help the Reach. And she's definitely refusing to do it.
Yeah. I don't think that Marjorie would want to chance Highgarden falling just to paint Cersei in a bad light, though.
Yeah, I mean, she does that herself well enough.
That's right. And her family is there in Highgarden. I felt like her primary worry was the attack on Highgarden because her mother, her grandmother, her brother, etc. are all there. But also, the worry that Loras mentions is that if with the Ironborn getting a solid footing in the shields, from there they can launch attacks on the rest of the Reach, like Old Town and the Arbor, and even Highgarden was one concern. But I think she's also a rather generally empathetic character, at least how she comes across. So she might possibly just be worried for everyone in the Reach with the Ironborn's reputation.
I'm going to do something I don't often do here, which is defend someone who makes a rash promise and a bold statement. I actually think that Loras' plan to end the blockade of Dragonstone, to free up the Redwyne fleet to go back around the continent to regain the Shield Islands, is actually quite solid. We're pretty confident that Dragonstone is only quite lightly garrisoned.
Yep. And
he, leading a landing force of enough strength, might well be able to retake the Dragonstone without too much danger. It could be a winning move for him.
Possibly. It's an island castle, so it'd be tough.
Not the easiest.
Yeah, tough to siege it. It'd be hard to make siege engines for one thing, because it's a very rocky island. It's, as you said, it's rash. It's definitely a rather dangerous, desperate move.
Yeah.
So what is the plan? You siege the castle. What can he do to get submission so quickly? I mean, they don't have the largest force either that is sailing there.
That's true.
Roland Storm is the Castellan. Does Loras offer him single combat? I mean, why would Roland agree to that? There's no upside there.
Well, I mean, they have been surrounded for a while, so they might be getting hungry. And so the
Yes.
thought of single combat to decide this could be good. If I win, you all sail away and let
Would
us.
they though? Would they just
Well,
turn around
well,
and
that would be my condition if I was Roland Storm.
right? You all need every ship needs to be out of here, and then you and
Right,
I will
yeah.
settle this.
But
But you know
so,
what?
yeah, I mean that's definitely one option is single combat.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I just don't know why Roland would accept it, unless you said. Now, Loras mentions he thinks it will take half a year. If they're down to half a year, I mean, that's a long time, but it's not that long of a time before you run out of food, And
Right.
it's not like Dragonstone has a great deal of farmland that they could have
Right.
stored a lot of
And
food.
of course, Roland Storm may have been left with instructions by Stannis to say the following: at all costs, keep the Redwyne fleet here.
Oh,
Do not, under any circumstances, allow the Redwyne fleet to move away.
huh. Yeah, maybe. I hadn't thought of that. What one thing that a siege of Dragonstone would further complicate is a very important mission that Stannis has commanded Roland and the rest of the garrison at Dragonstone to do, and that is mine obsidian, because it's in abundance due to the Dragonmont, the volcano. A siege would make that hard to do, I guess, and
true.
And if they lose Dragonstone, then the Lannisters aren't going to be mining obsidian, so.
Yeah. And how do you get it out of there while you're surrounded as well? I mean,
Right. So
they're not going to be like, we don't need fruit and vegetables, but we do want to take this dragon glass out of here.
we'll leave, but we're taking all this obsidian with us. You can have the castle. But it can ultimately, it can put the whole realm in jeopardy if, the others threaten, like Melisandre and Stannis believe are going to happen. So,
yeah,
something to keep an eye on there.
Certainly, Loras's request does create a potential win-win-win for Cersei.
It
because
does.
she sees the whole battle at Dragonstone as a win-win. Either she gets Dragonstone or she loses Loras, or even both, which would be like the dream situation.
And even if he dies and doesn't take Dragonstone, she still thinks about Osney Kettleblack consoling Margaery because she's still plotting Margaery's downfall.
Right. And of course, I mean, that leads us on to Loras will be absent, perhaps permanently. But while he is absent, perhaps permanently, Margaery will be more vulnerable to these, to the plans to deflower her with someone outside of wedlock.
Yes.
Again, I believe in Margaery based on very little evidence, but I believe in Margaery's ability to avoid this disgrace. But as I've mentioned before, not succumbing to this temptation might not be enough. She has to live a life that proves at every minute of every day that she is not succumbing to temptation, and that's essentially impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's got, unfortunately, the Queen Regent being the primary propaganda master behind this whole plan here. But one thing, a discussion comes up between Taena and Cersei at this point, where Taena mentions that Margaery has more friends at court than just her personal guard. That she's made a lot of friends with the young knights, and so has her cousins. And Cersei says that she's not worried about Margaery's friends at court. The army at Storm's End, however, and then she stops her thought, and Taena says, yeah, what are you going to do about that? And Cersei is kind of, for the first time, kind of taken aback that Taena asks such a pointed question and starts to get concerned. Now, first of all, she never finished her thought, Cersei, that the army at Storm's End, however, it sounds like she's afraid that Mace might roar back into King's Landing with a huge Tyrell force if he gets wind that Margaery has been arrested by the Faith for indecent acts or whatever.
Right.
But then you got the question. You got Cersei finally saying, "Why are you asking these questions?"
Right, which we've been saying for several chapters. Taena she's likable and smart and inquisitive, But why is she inquisitive?
Right.
You know where she came from. She is, to trust her so implicitly is weird. And so finally to see Cersei sort of questioning it it feels like it's overdue.
Yeah, and, as we see in this chapter, Falyse replaces Sinel and the puppeteers who replaced Sinel in Qyburn, whatever Qyburn is doing down in the Black Cells. And now remember, it was Taena that was responsible for Sinel being in her situation because she told Cersei that Sinel was a spy for Margaery. So it's a rather dangerous position for Taena to be in, and Cersei straight up threatens her with exactly what we're discussing right this minute. So
imagine Taena's face when Falyse arrived drunk in the middle of the night. She's like, phew, a couple more weeks without Qyburn.
Right. Now, I just this week saw on the A Song of Ice and Fire Facebook group, someone asked what Taena's long game is.
Mm-hmm.
And many thought that possibly she was working for Varys and Illyrio Mopatis. Huh. And
interesting.
Varys was cut in Myr. And he spent time in there recovering and then kind of building himself up.
And she's from Myr, right?
She's from Myr,
right.
That's
the connection, I see.
So possibly he still has connections and influence in Myr. And, Illyrio's in Pentos, which, is one of the free cities. So, you could possibly see how there could be a connection there. And Varys disappeared with Tyrion. We haven't seen the two of them since. But it would be very useful for him to have eyes and ears on Cersei and a voice to offer influence, possibly.
Yeah. Of course, the thing about what Taena's done is that Taena's done the one thing you would do practically no matter what your motivations are. You have become a confidant of the Queen. And it doesn't matter who you're working for, that's step one, even if it's yourself, even if it's just to feather your own nest. So it could be the Tyrells, it could be Varys, it could be Stannis for all I know.
Right. Yeah.
Or it could be securing her own future. That could be all it is.
Yeah. She is a very enigmatic character at this point.
Yeah. So we've got a comment here about Grand Maester Pycelle, but it's just more deterioration of that relationship between Cersei and Grand Maester Pycelle, mostly because he's the only person on the small council who puts any objections up to her. Right. And the thing is, she cannot see that as anything other than undermining her authority, rather than what it's supposed to be, a small council discussion of the ideas that we're having.
Yes, exactly. Any dissent is a problem for her. And not unsurprisingly, Pycelle disagrees with the idea of rearming the faith. So, he might be a creep who sexually abused his chambermaid and failed at his duties to support... failed at his duties to help Jon Arryn to support Tywin's position, which he thought was what Cersei wanted. But the man's been around a long time and is a pretty smart person. Yeah. So if he thinks it's a bad idea to rearm the faith, it's probably worth hearing his reasonings.
The other reason I'd keep him around is exactly the fact that he has admitted to Cersei, right? That he killed Jon Arryn because he believed that's what Cersei wanted.
Right.
That is a person you want to keep around for the long haul, because if ever suspicion came your way, it would be nice to say, Pycelle, why don't you tell them what you told me?
Right.
You tried to read my mind, incorrectly, I might add, and you killed him.
You killed the hand of the king.
Exactly.
Right.
But of her confidants, Qyburn, what is he up to? Well, last time he's been nursing the mountain for a long time, but I thought he'd sent the mountain's noggin down to Dawn.
Right. That's what we were told.
Okay. But the size of those armor plates that have been ordered feel like the only person who might need those is the mountain. So I wonder if some fake noggin has been sent to Dawn, and the mountain maybe is making a recovery, which is why he thinks Loras could be replaced with someone even better. But
yes, exactly. That is definitely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, everything you say is it seems possible. And
but how do you fake Gregor Clegane's head? I
yeah,
mean,
right. I don't
he's
know.
called the Mountain.
Yeah, I don't know how big head sizes are comparatively. Maybe they've found some giant guy in Flea Bottom who was 6'8", and his head was large enough that they could make a go of it. But yeah, this person. So Qyburn tells Cersei, "Hey, if Loras happens to die on that siege, I have a replacement in mind for the spot on the Kingsguard." And this person seems to be all things except gallant. She says she wants someone who's got a little bit of gallantry, and he's like, "Well, I don't have that for you. But what I do have is someone who's loyal, protect your son, kill your enemies, keep your secrets, and he's unbeatable in combat by any man." So, yeah, it's not made clear that discussion and the armor discussion are related.
Are the same, right?
But
right.
They come up at the same time. And it's very curious, and it makes you wonder what's going on there.
Yeah. I mean, if he wheeled out Beric Dondarrion as her new champion, and an unnecessarily large statue of a man in armor, she's going to be quite disappointed, I feel.
Yes, I think so. And
what he's doing with the ladies is even more terrifying.
Yeah, I was just going to remind about the puppeteers. He says when Cersei gives him Falyse, he says, "Thank you. The puppeteers are quite used up," which is just, I don't even know what that means, and it is terrifying to think about what that could possibly mean. Just a reminder, the puppeteers were part of a popular show in the city. I think it was last chapter or the one before, where a lion ends up killing a stag, and she thought, "Oh, well, maybe that's a lesson for my enemies." And then a dragon comes and kills the lion, and she said that turns it into treason, and gave the female puppeteers to Qyburn. And apparently they've been used up already.
Yeah. So on the subject of Falyse, and Lord have mercy on her doomed soul, but just a reminder, it was not because we read the books previously that we thought that Cersei Lannister was insane to hire Falyse Stokeworth and Bolman Birch to be her cat's paws. It's because it was doomed to fail and inevitably to blow back on Cersei. Yep. And sure enough, before Bronn killed him, he extorted the truth out of him, which is Cersei sent them to kill her.
Oh, Falyse and Bolman. They thought they were doing the right thing. But
that's the drink right there.
Yeah. I had to stop reading at that when Falyse came, when the guard came to get Cersei, because Falyse was there. It was getting late at night when I was reading that part the first time through this week. And I had to stop.
You were not getting up to this call. You were like, "All right, I'm going to go to sleep."
Yes, I was like,
you deal with Falyse, Cersei. I'm off to bed.
I need to be fully rested before I read what happens to poor Falyse. But it's no surprise that she kept Taena away. That's not a conversation she would want anyone else hearing. Taena started to get out of bed with Cersei.
Oh yeah,
and she was like,
right.
No, you stay. One of us should get some rest. So, yeah, what happened was Bolman chose a joust duel instead of an accidental death. And Cersei told us in that chapter when she got the pair to put the pair up to this, that Bolman was a renowned jouster in his youth. But clearly he didn't expect Bronn to play dirty, and I just, for the life of me, cannot understand why he would not have expected Bronn to play dirty.
We sure did.
Yes, and so did Cersei. She thought to herself, he's no knight, he's a battle-hardened killer. Yeah. But like you said, when Bronn extorted the truth out of Bolman before he killed him, why would Falyse bring that up? That it signed her own death warrant when she brought that up.
Maybe it didn't, though. Maybe what she was thinking was, I am now a loose end, right? Balman died. I'm the loose end. If I tell her that the word is out anyway, the whole world knows that you hired us to kill, then maybe I'm not worth killing. Whereas if Balman was killed in silence and I ran away, then I'm the loose end that needs to be dispatched.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there is actually kind of a logic there. Everyone knows, so there's no point in killing me to silence me.
Just because I'm the one that blabbed it to everyone.
She was given one final chance to join the Silent Sisters, and she didn't even, I don't even think she acknowledged that. But so honestly, though, I feel for Falyse because Cersei was so sweet, like they were best friends when she was wooing them. So surely Falyse never thought that she was going to harm her. She expected to get back, get the backing of the Iron Throne and then crush Bronn and save her mother and become the lady of the castle. And she even says to Queen Cersei, all we did was in the service of the queen. And I was like, oh no, you're making it worse. Just stop talking.
And on Bronn, I mean, it's so much fun that he continues to blight Cersei and live in her head, squatting alongside Tyrion rent-free. He also now has a significant threat against her. I'm not sure exactly how he can use it, but at least he knows who his enemy is.
Right.
And, he's clearly gained the loyalty of House Stokeworth, who favored him over Falyse.
Right. Yeah. And Cersei admits at this part, to herself, not out loud, that she never really believed that he was harboring Tyrion anyway. So the whole plot was just to punish him for naming the baby Tyrion.
I'm waiting for the moment when she admits to us, to herself, and therefore to us, that she never really believed that Tyrion killed Joffrey. And that's the one I want to hear.
That would be
something. Because I still believe it. I still believe she doesn't truly believe it. So, what Cersei does to Taena is pretty abusive, really. I mean, and...
yes, very much.
Cersei herself is thinking about the abuse she's suffered while she's doing it, and the abused becoming the abuser is not... It's certainly not something that's set in stone, but it's certainly believable that it can happen.
Right.
And especially for Cersei, you might argue that Taena gave consent, but her consent is clearly given under duress,
right.
And so that doesn't really count as consent. So, boo Cersei.
Agreed.
One more time.
A couple things. With this part of the chapter is first we get some insight into Robert and Cersei's marriage, which sadly, not surprisingly, involved physical and sexual abuse of her from Robert. And, and you can understand her feelings of wanting out of that marriage. It sounded pretty awful. And the more we learn of Robert, the harder it is for me to imagine him being Ned's best friend. He is, in some ways, he's a gregarious, fun-loving guy, but in a lot of ways, he was really kind of a bad person. I mean, he treated his wife terribly. And he just had Cersei goes into a lot of detail in this chapter about basically how he used people, how she thinks about Taena. Oh, Robert would have liked you for about, 15, 20 minutes, and then he would have trouble remembering your name.
But the thing is, Robert was a changed person after Lyanna's death.
True.
I think you have to keep that in mind. And I think that the person he was and how in love he was with Lyanna, if he'd married Lyanna, it's possible that he could have been a good husband and a decent person.
Maybe. I think Ned was having those same thoughts right before he and his group were attacked by Jaime and Jaime's men. I think he was wondering to himself, would Robert have been a better husband to Lyanna? That was a long while ago now, but I feel like he was having those similar thoughts.
He couldn't have been worse. And he was in love with her, which he was never in love with Cersei.
Right.
So...
Yes. Both true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, the other part is, so Cersei comes back into the bedroom drunk on power and wine. And the fact that she believes herself to be a better king than Robert. And I think she was trying to emulate how Robert claimed his rights with her. And, she hated Robert and hated those actions, yet she was drawn to recreate them and experience the perspective, the opposite perspective, but she wasn't able to get into it. And, she tells us through her own thoughts that it was a mixture of not being turned on by Taena and not finding pleasure in someone else but Jaime.
Right.
But I wondered if maybe she lost interest in Taena when Taena consented, if she wanted her to put up a fight.
Yeah. And that also might be a reflection on the relationship she had with Robert, that perhaps Robert was only capable of being with Cersei when it was aggressive and, they were fighting each other, and when... If she ever was compliant, he was not interested, kind of thing. So
maybe.
Yeah. Horrible mess for everybody involved.
It is.
Well, let's move on to spoilers. Remember, if you join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, you can get the spoiler section. Well, thank you. Good spoilers.
Yeah, certainly.
Having heard that, I mean, if all you have to do is join the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, and you can skip the next 100 episodes. Mackelly covered it all in spoilers.
Dude. You don't even have to read A Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, it covered all that too, yeah. Background. All
right, well, so this week we're going to talk about a couple of smaller bits of background to color in the chapter a bit more fully. So when Cersei is first dubious of the news of the Ironborn taking the Shield Islands, she says that the Ironborn hasn't raided the Reach since Dagon Greyjoy sat the Seastone chair. Well, so who is Dagon Greyjoy? Well, he was the Lord of the Iron Islands about 100 years ago, and his Ironborn raided along the western coast of Westeros, basically the entire western coast, from the north all the way down to the Reach. And like much of the Ironborn reavers, they frustrated the wardens of those regions because when he and his men would be threatened by a force, they would just scurry back into their boats and back off to sea they would go. But eventually, Dagon was defeated by the Targaryen king. I think it was Aerys the First. I'm not quite positive, but I think that's who the king was that eventually defeated Dagon. And he does have the moniker The Last Reaver because, like Cersei said, no one's done this level of reaving since Dagon. So, and now, quick spoiler alert here. I'm going to talk about something that does happen in season 2 of House of the Dragon. Probably take me about 20, 30 seconds to do it. So
I think 30 seconds is my estimate.
Yeah, so you could just hit that fast forward 30 seconds button and we should...
Starting now.
Now. All right, so Cersei also hopes that Bronn and Loras might kill each other if she sends Loras to take care of Bronn, much like Sir Eric and Sir Eric. She's referring to the twin brothers, Sir Eric with an A and Sir Eric with an E, Cargill, who also happen to be Kingsguard brothers for King Viserys I. When Viserys died, Eric with an E supported Queen Rhaenyra in the Blacks, and Eric with an A supported King Aegon II in the Greens. This is the part I'm talking about in Season 2. Ultimately, the twins met in combat, and there are a lot of different accounts of the duel. However, the version that I prefer is that after they both took mortal wounds, they held each other as they died.
Well, unfortunately, if they went forward 30 seconds, they'd land right in the middle of the spoiler.
Damn it! We can fix that in post.
All right, comparison with the television show, not a shred of this is maintained. There's no Taena Merryweather. Yeah. There's no Falyse Stokeworth. There was no attempt on Bronn's life. There's no animosity between Cersei and Bronn. There's no Shield Islands. There's no Loras scaling the walls that I remember.
There's no animosity between Cersei and Bronn, the characters.
The characters, quite, exactly, yeah. So, yeah, none of this really happens, so nothing to compare. Pedantry Corner, I found a nice, interesting little editing mistake in my copy of the book.
Yes, no, it was in mine too. Yeah.
Yours too, yeah. And you agree, right? I'm not wrong here.
Yeah, Yeah, the only issue
well,
is that...
let me tell what it is, and you can then correct me why I'm wrong. At the small council, when discussing the Iron Islanders' attack on the Shield Islands, Cersei says, Stannis may have a hand in this. Balon Greyjoy offered my Lord Father an alliance. Perhaps his son has offered one to Stannis. But it's not his son who's in charge, it's his brother, Euron, and that seemed like an editing mistake to me. But... Give me an alternative.
It's either an editing mistake or Cersei is not aware of who Euron Greyjoy is and just assumes he is some son of Balon. So it's one or the other. But
Could just be a simple ignorance of Cersei, Yeah. But yeah, okay. Okay, well, maybe not. Maybe I'll back off then. Not pedantry. I was wrong. Well, but it stuck out to me because I felt like it was a mistake.
No, you're right. I glossed over it until I read it here in your pedantry, and I thought, you're right. She did say that. So,
News and notes.
Well, George Martin mentioned on his blog that while in Belfast, Ireland this summer, he had lunch with Christian Nairn, the man who turned a character who only ever said one word into an icon and household name. And I put this out at least on, I'm pretty sure on Discord, possibly some of the other social medias, that just last week or the week before, there was a truck in front of me at a stoplight that had a license plate that said Hodor. So,
nice.
Household name and also vanity plates.
Mm-hmm.
And as Martin put it, Christian memorized his character's entire season's dialogue the day after being cast. So that's how talented of an actor he is. But it seems that Christian has written a book. And no, that is not a joke about a book full of the word Hodor. It's actually a memoir called Beyond the Throne. So as memoirs go, it obviously starts with his childhood. He does get into some of his time on Game of Thrones, and I don't know what else, but I'm sure there's a ton more. I know he's a DJ, so I'm sure he talks about being a DJ and whatever else. Martin told us that he'll be touring in the U.S. to promote the book, and Martin is hoping that he'll stop by Santa Fe and do a signing at Martin's Jean Cocteau Cinema.
Yeah, he always comes across as really funny and interesting, that guy. At like Comic Cons and things, you see him, and he just seems like he's such a nice guy. And he's desperately funny about the character, sort of like, you ask him what his favourite scene was, he's like, it's the one where I said Hodor.
All right.
So happy 5th anniversary to us. If you're a sustainer, you're getting this episode on our actual anniversary, which is October the 7th. That's our 5-year anniversary. And if you're not, you're going to get a day after. Regardless, thank you to everyone who's been a part of this journey. We have enjoyed every minute of it, and we couldn't do it without you.
That's right. And hey, thank you for reaching episode 258 with us. We could not be more serious when we say you're the driving force behind this venture. There's weeks that are struggles, and we pull it together because you all are counting on us, and we appreciate that, and we are humbled and honored by it.
Yeah, if we were just doing it for the two of us, we would have quit by now, I think.
Yeah, yes.
There are times when just the sight of your face just
I was sitting at that other table yesterday at first with Jeannie, and I said, I got to go over to that table and talk with Simon for a bit, and she said, don't you see him like every day? Not quite, but
we don't have a review to read out today, so we've been a bit short of them recently. So get yours in now. We'll read it out as soon as we can. Please keep up the great work with the 5-star ratings. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, all of those are great places to give us a review.
That's right.
Let's conclude this one. So it's a mixed bag for Cersei. She may be about to gain Dragonstone and rid herself of Loras Tyrell, or both. Just for the sake of a few little islands in the Manda. Seems like a good deal.
Yeah, unless they manage to launch from the Ironborn, that is, launch from those little islands and create more havoc that would look really bad from the Crown's perspective.
Yep, indeed.
With Loras going off to Dragonstone, it just further creates more vulnerability for Margaery, at least at a temporary level.
Yeah. And like you said, it's probably going to take a while, this, relieving this siege. So she's going to have to spend a long time without her best protector by her side. And in that time, her husband King is still going to be a young boy who can't really protect her. So, yeah.
And he's not Joffrey. He doesn't have he doesn't have that independent drive that Joffrey would have had even at Tommen's age.
Right. Whatever Qyburn is up to is no good, and we fear for all involved. And you think about Varys' attitude to Stannis. Remember what Varys said about having Stannis as king, that he would never let anyone who dabbled in magic be the king. And I wonder if Varys is not in the picture at the moment, so we don't know where he is, but he's going to have a similar feeling towards Cersei after this, I would imagine, if she's allowing Qyburn to perform dark arts upon human subjects.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But speaking of Qyburn, Pycelle is also in a bit of hot water with Cersei, simply because he's the only one saying, wait, have you thought this through at all?
Yeah.
She don't want to hear that.
The answer to that question might be, Qyburn, do you have any room down there? Do you have an extra? Yeah.
Yes. And at Pycelle's age, I don't think it would take much to bring about the end of him.
No.
Speaking of being down in the Black Cells, Taena, we don't know what she's up to. She could be on the up and up and just be someone who's trying to climb the social ladder and has been pretty successful at it. She could be a spy for Margaery. Cersei has told Jaime she thinks that Taena's a spy for Margaery. Or she could be a spy for Illyrio Mopatis and Varys. We don't know. We don't know what she's doing. But she's playing a dangerous game, that's for sure.
I still like my Stannis theory, which I made up off the spur of the moment. Falyse, goodbye, Falyse. I hope we will never see you again, and I hope you go swiftly, because you're going to a place where nobody should go. And Bronn, don't know what he's going to do with the information, but he knows who his best friend isn't.
Right, isn't. Right. Yeah.
All right. Next week, we have the other half of the Wonder Twin powers.
That's right.
Jaime Lannister.
Yeah. And, he makes it to River Run, finally. So everyone's going to want to tune in and see whether he raises arms against the Tullys, as he has sworn not to do.
Oathbreaker.
Right.
There's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. The upper tiers get you the spoiler section. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
Well, if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're looking to keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you go out and check out our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter, @GhostHarrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the real action happens on Discord. So I suggest you join us there.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.